Oh, hey, good morning. Sorry, brain's elsewhere. Busy time of year. A lot going on, and I'm just kind of looking at plants around me, dusting off my table because I make a mess on it. Good morning. Happy Saturday. For anybody in Calgary, do not be alarmed by the big warm ball in the sky. That is normal at this time of year. Funny thing is that we're actually tracking around average, right? For temperatures and rain and whatnot, because average is obviously over the whole time. But wherever you're tuning in from, Calgary this week was pretty miserable. We had rain, hail, snow, fog, wind. It wasn't great. And I found every single person, not just people in the garden industry, not just gardeners, every single person seemed to be a little deflated.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I was talking to Nick and it was just like, do you ever feel really unproductive this week when it's not sunny out?
Yep.
And you can't do a lot?
Yeah, and you just feel like, ugh.
Yeah.
So, but today the sun is shining. It was a beautiful day yesterday. I managed to pull it back. This is what spring is. This moisture we got, the cooler temperatures, now heat. All of those little fuzzies on the tree are going to explode. We're going to see blooms coming up. I'm seeing tulips everywhere now. I've seen pulmonaria out. I've seen so many things happening. I've seen gaillardia right here in the wild, like not in the garden center, in bloom. The prairie crocus are still going. We're getting there. We're getting there. Spring is here. So this time of year, a lot of us are looking in our gardens and we're planning and we're thinking and maybe we cut a new bed. Maybe something didn't make it. Maybe we're changing our minds. And obviously we talk a lot this time of year about annuals and about veggies, about food production. But my favorite plant type variety, I should say, that always stays close to my heart is the perennial. It's a backbone of the garden. It really holds everything together. There's some myths on it. We're going to bust those. Myth busted. But we're going to talk about what is a perennial. So a perennial is a long-lived plant. The name comes from Latin. It's per annus of the years. We have perennial. We use it to differentiate between an annual that only lives one season, a biennial, which is 2 seasons. Then we have perennial. But when we say perennial, specifically perennial, most of what we're referring to is anything that's herbaceous, because trees and shrubs are perennial. We plant them once, they come back for years. You know, some trees, the giant redwood, the sequoia, it can take 750 years just to mature.
Oh, we have to stop for a second. Our lovely friends can't hear you.
Oh no.
Just on Instagram.
Okay, do I need, but if I project, am I going to deafen everybody on the other channel?
No, you're just talking. No,
okay.
I'm going to bring you closer.
Okay.
If you ever wanted to get closer to Colin Hales, this is how you do it.
All right. I don't feel any extra pressure right now.
How does this sound? Does this sound better?
I feel like I've got something in my teeth. I'm like, so anyway, perennials are
And then why don't we get you a little closer on the website?
I'm gonna back up at the same rate. Should we lean in? It's like an informal chat. Hey friends.
Yeah.
Hey. Hey, how are you? I didn't see you there.
Okay, let's see. Yeah.
Okay,
that's a bit better.
Okay. So yeah, trees and shrubs are technically perennials, but they're not. When we as gardeners talk about perennials, we are talking about herbaceous perennials. Perennials that they don't develop the strong wooden stems that we see in trees and shrubs. There's no feature left over the winter. There are semi-evergreen perennials, but I'm not going to get into that. We get heavy snowpack. We really don't see them. So examples of perennials are what I have around me. We have, this is a hosta, and they didn't call it rhubarb hosta. They called it lemon snap. Whatever. But rhubarb is also a perennial.
Yeah.
Shout out to rhubarb. Chives are perennials. We have primrose. We have a daisy here.
Okay.
We have a bellis and a primrose. Beautiful. Great color scheme together. So All of these are what we know as perennials, daffodils. They're a shorter-lived perennial, but they are a perennial. And then we have weeds. And certain weeds are perennials. Dandelion, purple loosestrife, creeping bell. They're also perennials. So it's any plant that we see year after year. Now, there's a slide here, and our friends on Insta, what do the cool kids call it? Do they call it the gram? Do they call it Insta? Do they call it IG?
All of the above.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not cool, so I'm going to call it, I'll call it the Instagram. So, I don't know if that works. But all I have here is a plant growth chart. So, in a nutshell, what ends up happening, so an annual does its entire life cycle in one season. So it starts as a seed. A lot of us have started seeds. We stick a tomato seed in a pot in March. By October, we're throwing the whole plant in the compost. Boom, done. And it went through germination. It went through vegetative growth. It went through flower. It went through pollination, fruiting, harvesting, done, bam. We'll do more seeds next year. Biennial, you can put in a seed or you buy them. First year, all vegetative growth. It's just establishing. It's coming out hard. Winter goes dormant. Next year, rockets up because it's got all of that energy from its vegetative growth, puts out a flower, gets pollinated, goes to seed. Bam, done. Then it dies. Perennials, same kind of cycle. So we either buy them, start them from seed. They go through the whole season, vegetative growth. Now, your first season, you may or may not see flowers. Okay, sometimes they just put out growth. Sometimes the blooms aren't worth anything. A lot of people live head the first season. So all the plant is doing is putting energy back into the roots. It goes dormant. Next year it comes out, gets a little bit more mature, so on, so on, so on, so on, for an extended period of time. And that is the life cycle of the three main types of plants: annual, biennial, perennial. So we have a perennial garden, a perennial bed, and perennials work well. They play well with us. You don't have to have a perennial bed, an annual bed, a veggie bed. You can mix and match. You can put stuff with other things. I know some people, they'll use annuals to accent their perennial bed. So in between bloom seasons on the perennials, you have some color, you have some things happening. Other people will put annuals next to their veggies for companion planting to attract pollinators. Other people, chives and rhubarb, which are food, are perennials, and they put them in their veggie beds. So there's all kinds of combinations. You want to amend your soil. Now, we did a webinar on soil. I believe we've also done a podcast on soil. Please, please, please feel free to reference those. I can't go into all of the soils again. But real quick, coir, worm castings, volcanic mineral, manure, all of that good stuff, whatever you got, put it together. You want a really healthy soil. The perennials are drawing every year from that soil. So having a well-mixed, light, airy soil for gas exchange, moisture retention, all of that is crucial to maintaining a healthy. A lot of times, people ask me, I hope everybody has a coffee, by the way. Happy Saturday morning. We didn't do a 2-minute warning because we were 3 minutes late. My fault. There was a football match on.
No,
and
it was my fault.
Oh, Brandy, I was trying to take the heat for you. It was our fault. We're a team. I probably don't need coffee. I think this is my 5th one. So, but I'm drinking it anyway. And I already lost my train of thought.
So you finished soil, so fertilizer.
Yeah, I thought I had more to say on soil. Moving right along. Soil. Moisture retention, gas exchange, all of that good stuff that comes with it. That's where I was at. Fertilizer. So you want to feed your perennials. Again, they're coming back every year, but we want them to have the strength. Now, especially in climates like ours, in Calgary, specifically one of the hardest growing zones, zone 3, Grand Prairie, which is 9 hours north of us, has a better growing climate than Calgary. Our perennials really, really, really get the snot kicked out of them. That wasn't the word I was going to use, but I'm not sure who's attending the webinar. And we want to make sure they have all of the health to go dormant and not die and come back. Because a lot of times we see perennials that are underperforming. People ask, why is my perennial underperforming? And then you find out they haven't amended the soil and they don't fertilize. Well, I right there, I don't have to go any deeper. That's your answer. Healthy soil, fertilizer. For my perennials, I like an all-purpose. Honestly, you can really give them anything. I know a lot of people will give them a fruiting one, a tomato one even. High phosphate helps root development, helps flower development. They really want those, echinacea buds to pop. They really want, I don't know if you guys can see this, my favorite, as if I wasn't going to mention it specifically, they really want that iris to be strong and stand up. So they focus more on that. You really can't go wrong. I would stay away from anything high nitrogen. That's the only thing I would stay away from. A lot of above ground leafy growth. Now that is going to help the roots, but I would focus either on an all-purpose or something that specifically does the roots. But again, you can't go wrong. Weeding. Weeds are going to rob your perennials of their nutrients, of their water, and they will get in there. Now you have a thick perennial border. Weeds find it very hard to get in there. Nature doesn't like a vacuum. If you have it filled, nature is like, all right, I don't need to fill that. I'll move right on. But you really, really want to try and keep that perennial border nice and full. And there's some cool things. So like hostas, okay, very popular perennial. Couple of good things. When hostas get mature, it's just this mass amount of leaves. These leaves shade out the ground beneath them, so it's harder for weeds to get in there. And then another cool feature, and I'll try and get this on both cameras. Do you see this reservoir channel running down the leaf?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, so what happens? Brilliant evolutionary design by the hosta. Well done, hosta. The water hits and the leaf channels it all in and pulls it down to its own root system, shading out and acting as an umbrella in the ground around it, so it's harder for weeds to get in there, so they can't start stealing its moisture. Okay, brilliant evolutionary trick by the hosta. So perennials will help you do that. You allow them to get full. You allow them to kind of grow into each other. It can be a little trickier to amend the soil. You don't have as many weeds. But anytime that you're starting a perennial bed, keep those weeds out of it. You really want all of the good stuff to get into your perennials. Deadheading. I forgot to bring my pruners because Brandy was running late. So right here on the iris, we can see that there's a deadhead. However, right next to it, we can also see that there's a couple of live heads. Okay, so what I would do is I would take my pruners and I would snap it off. I don't have pruners, so I'm just going to pop it off. Okay, purpose of that, now the plant isn't taking its energy to form a seed. Now the plant is allowing all of the other flowers to bloom and put its energy back down into the roots. So that's why we deadhead. You really want to clean. And like I said, some people live head, same purpose. You're not even letting the plant spend any energy putting out flowers. All that energy is going back into root development. I live head hostas, not a big fan of the hosta flower. Some people do it for new perennials. If a perennial is suffering, you might see it happen. Choice is yours. Some people hosta mainly grown for foliage. You may not care about the flower. Other people adore their hosta flowers. The pollinators love them, but I have enough other things for pollinators, so I don't mind robbing them of that. And then water. Perennials are an amazing water saver. They need water to establish. Once established, they're normally good with what they get from Mother Nature. They may need a helping hand. Let them tell you. If they're dropping their flowers too soon, the flowers are coming out and they look amazing. So perennial flowers normally last a good amount of time. And the flowers are coming out and they're just falling off. Probably doesn't have enough water. It cannot maintain the flower. Give it some water. Perennials also work really well with soaker hoses. You're not moving your perennials around. Every year they're coming up in the same spot. We're going to talk about dividing and transplanting in a second. But it's not like annuals where you plant some here and next year you might plant here and not here and you change it around. You put it in, that's kind of its home forever. Run a soaker hose through your perennial bed. Now it's a no-brainer. Put it on a timer. You never have to think about it. You're like, one and done. You can set it to come on once a week, or you see them thirsty, you turn it on drip, you saturate the soil, turn it off, and they'll love you for it. While they're establishing, though, you absolutely need to water. Okay, so the first year, you're going to be helping them get there. You're going to be helping that root. Between water and fertilizer, you'll get an established perennial. So what is the purpose of a perennial? Or the word that I like to coin, purposennial.
You did it.
I did it in one. Purposennials. Pollination. Crucial for pollinators because you have different flowers all the time. Right now, I got spring bloomers. I picked them deliberately because I like flowers. But ones like this, which are native, okay? These are essential for the pollinators. And they put out a ton more pollen than some of the tiny annuals that we love. These guys are just jam-packed with it. You know, ones like the iris, here, or the lily, sorry, not the iris, that's the iris. If I take it, I'm willing to bet, if I touch it,
Gosh.
Yep.
What are you doing?
Pollen all over my fingers. So they put out a massive amount of pollen. So they are crucial for pollinators. Soil support. Those roots, yeah, they're pulling stuff out of the soil. Yeah, my fingers, look, fingers are stained now from the pollen. That's how much pollen is on there. Those roots, they lock in. They're keeping that plant stable. So they really solidify the soil around them, which is essential. It prevents erosion, helps maintain overall soil health. Amazing. Year-round growth. So even if there's no flowers, you know, you put interesting foliages together. The hosta and the iris, totally different colors, look amazing together. So you can play with textures, shapes, heights, variegation, all kinds of things going on, and you can allow them to play well. So you can really design. Grasses, we just did a podcast with some amazing friends of ours on grasses. They're a perennial. You can look at putting some grasses in. So you can have a lot of fun without flowers just by playing with textures. And that's obviously for aesthetic, not for the pollinators. Water conservation, already touched on that. They're going to help. They're not going to need as much water as our annuals. Helping the soil be stable also goes a long way for that. And they're sustainable. So you put that in once and you're done. Annuals every year, it's more production in water, in heavy fertilizers, in plastic pots that they have to be grown in. Perennials are a heck of a lot more sustainable in the long term. So the perennial really is the ideal. Now, with that being said, I know it sounds like I'm knocking everything else. Absolutely not. Anybody who's followed me on anything from TV to GA Kids TV to the podcast to these webinars knows how much I love my flowers. Okay, I adore them. I'm currently pressing flowers. I finally got a flower press again. I bought a flowering basket yesterday because I was just sick of not having color. I adore my annuals. I absolutely do. They make me happy. It's a long winter. This week was just gray and miserable, and seeing those pinks and whites and yellows and blues and everything just jammed in together just makes me smile. And Jenny loves them. It makes her smile, so that makes me happy. And we love playing with different themes. So let's just do a quick side-by-side comparison. So annual, prolific blooms. You're going to put them in, and they are going to just hammer out flowers. I'm talking annual flowers now, by the way, not veggies. We put in our annual flowers, marigolds, impatiens, geraniums. You keep deadheading them, they're just like flower, flower, flower. All season long, you have color. Once this iris is done and we deadhead it for the final time, it ain't flowering again. We'll have the foliage. I love the foliage. It'll look pretty, but I'm not going to see another iris flower. But that's okay because I know I'll get it next year. So that's the difference there. Annuals, we have to plant them every year. So every year you have to come, you have to buy them, you have to go and plant them, which is amazing. Planting day is like one of our favorite days. I go out and I'm wearing all my slouchy clothes and Jenny comes out like she's on a photo shoot to plant. She's got glasses, a hat, she's got like everything rocking. I'm normally in like some horrible stained t-shirt, ripped pants and my old beat up Doc Martens. But we plant together and we love it. And there's no right or wrong. We work together. Jenny will ask me for tips, and then she'll be like, I'm putting these colors together. And it's just a great day. It's so much fun. You don't get that with perennials. So some people go, well, I don't have the time. I love perennials for that. Other people go, I don't want to lose a day like that. So again, you can have both. Annual, instant gratification. You do your annual pots. Do you ever do this, Brandy? Do you ever plant your annual pots and you're done, you water, and you put everything away and you look and you go, everything's great. And you go inside, you shower, you're sitting on the couch, and then you get up and you go back outside and just look at them?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
When you put in the work, you're going to enjoy it, right? That instantly becomes more entertaining than a TV, your phone, like whatever.
I'll go out and look at them at different lights.
Yeah.
So first thing in the morning when the sun's coming up, I go look to see what they look like in that light. At night during golden hour or blue hour, I go outside and that's the point of it. We're meant to enjoy it. It's instant gratification. Perennials takes a bit longer. You buy a hosta like this, it's not going to do much the first year. Second year, it'll be better. Third year, it's going to be great. Fourth, fifth, sixth, and onward, it's going to be outstanding. But it requires a little bit more patience. That being said, please go out and look at your hosta during those times too. Hostas need love too. For only $19.99, you can... Yeah. So anyway, annuals, perfect for beginners. The reason I say that, if you mess up, you can try again next year. Okay. Perennials require a smidge more experience because you put it in and you're like, it looks great there. You put your hosta in, you go, hey, that's great. That's where I love it. 3 years later, it's now blocking your access to like your plug-in. So you can't plug in your mower or something, and you're constantly moving it and you're damaging it. You're like, oh, I wish I hadn't planted it there. Now I have to transplant it. So a little bit more experience, a little more understanding of growth rates and how they're going to integrate with each other. I've seen people plant perennials like this, and within 2 years, the perennials are like, hey, buddy, how you doing? And then I've seen other people plant them this far apart and wonder why there's like a huge area in the garden that's never going to fill. So a smidge more experience. It's certainly not a barrier for entry. You can lift them, you can transplant them, but annuals are great to just get in there. All right. So I've talked about this. What is transplanting? So say we have planted this hosta and it's in the wrong place. Or I've planted this hosta and somebody's coming to redo my fence and I need to move it. So that is transplanting. All transplanting is moving a mature established plant from one area to the other. You can't do it with annuals. Okay, maybe you put your annuals somewhere and you're like, you plant them early spring and you go, oh my God, they're amazing. And then the sun starts getting higher in the sky and you go, oh my God, now my begonias they're getting into full sun, they're going to die, I need to lift them. You can move them as well. Mainly, we don't. We kind of know where they're going. It's perennials that we have to look at. I like to move my perennials in the spring, unless they're spring bloomers. Transplanting causes shock. The perennial tends to drop its flowers. Okay, it's in shock. It's going into survival mode. It's like, no time for flowers. I need to develop my roots and my foliage. So anything that is not early spring, I transplant in the spring. Anything that is early spring, transplant early fall. Okay, the reason for that is temperature. I don't want to do it in the middle of the summer. I have done it before. When you landscape, you have no choice. I have done it before, but if I'm doing it personally at my house where I can control the time, I'm waiting until it's later. I don't want to be doing it when it's 35 degrees, full sun on the roots. The plant's already shocked. Now I'm shocking it even more. The best time to transplant, 10 degrees, cloudy, and drizzle. The plants, sometimes they don't even know they've been moved because there's no shock to the roots. Everything is at perfect temperature and the ground is already moist. That's your best time to transplant. Good sharp shovel, pruners. Sometimes perennial roots are big. You do not want to rip them. If you think about us, is it better to have a jaggedy, nasty cut or a clean cut? Clean cut every time, it heals better. Same with them. Don't be ripping roots out of the ground. A good sharp shovel or an edger, slice straight through, or your pruners and just snip around. Prep the area. I'm just going to go through my notes here. Dig the hole where it's going to go. So you're moving it from here to here. Best guess, dig a hole. you're probably not going to get it right. You might not be deep enough. You might be too deep. You might not be wide enough. Might be a little too wide. But at least you're not starting from scratch when you get your plant over there. I've seen people do it. I've done it. I'm so excited to transplant and lift it out, and I turn around, I'm like, oh no. The plant is now cooking, and I'm digging a hole as fast as I can. I don't like digging that fast when it's 35 degrees either. Okay, so prep your area as you go. Get as much of the root ball as you can. So when you're digging out, you don't want to come in with your shovel. You want to put your shovel down, and if you can, go out. Bit of soil falls off, who cares? But you don't want to be slicing into your root ball. You want as much root ball as you can. Plant at the correct depth. If I lift it out the ground and that's where the soil is, that's where the soil is going to be in the rest of my flower bed. Okay, I'm not planting it high and I'm not planting it deep. You want to plant it as if it came out of a pot. Backfill with a good soil. We've just shocked it. So if you haven't amended the soil, amend it. Put in some compost, some sea soil, worm castings. Again, we did a whole thing on that. Mix it in so that when the roots start growing, they've got a nice, easy soil to get into. Water. Sometimes 3 times a day if it's scorching hot outside. You don't want it to shock you. It can't look for water. You've just literally cut all of its roots and reshaped it. It has no water source. You're going to have to give it a drink. Fertilize with a root booster or a transplant fertilizer. Unless you are in the late fall, early to late fall, then do not. This is for spring transplanting. Give it a fertilizer. What is dividing? Okay, and not math. Don't worry. Oh my God, can you imagine math questions? What's division? 100 divided by 4. No, I wouldn't do that to you. I was on a radio interview one time, and the guy asked me a math question.
Yeah.
What the heck, man? You want to talk gardening?
I like addition in gardening because you just add more plants.
Love it. Yeah, there you go. You really want to add plants, go multiplication. Yeah. But then that's hard to do the math. So we're going to stick with addition. Brandy nailed it.
Square root. Anyway, sorry. This has been a huge digression. Sorry.
I like that one a lot, the square root. Okay, yeah, I got to get back on track here. So dividing or splitting a perennial, this is a great thing about perennials. Once they get mature enough, you get more free perennials if you want. So eventually this hosta is going to get big. This whole area that you see in soil now will have leaves coming out of it, and you go, I could use another hosta over there. That would be a good symmetry. You lift this guy out as if you are transplanting him, and you cut him in half. Okay, a little bit more to it. Quickly go through some notes. Again, same principle as transplanting. Early spring, unless it's an early spring bloomer. Those you want to divide in the fall. Now, if you don't care that it drops its flowers, you are more concerned about keeping your perennials healthy, go ahead and divide it in the spring. I've done it. I'm like, nope, I care more about growth. I'll enjoy you better next year. Sliced. Sure enough, I lost the flowers. Worthwhile. Zero regrets. Again, you want a good sharp shovel, clean sharp pruners. Prep the area where the other half of it is going, much like we did for the transplant. You're dividing it. One's going here, one's going here. Prep this area. Get as much roots as you can because we're about to really hack the roots up and divide as evenly as possible. I've seen people do it before and they're balancing and they go to kick in their shovel, or my favorite thing to divide, an edger. I like that it's round. I love these. I've had to use saws, knives, pruners, everything to cut. This is my favorite one if I can do it. My handy dandy edger. And I see people do it and they end up just shaving off a chunk of roots. So now you don't have 2 plants. You lifted a plant out, shocked it, hacked off some of its roots and replanted it. The plant's like, thanks, bud. That was an awesome start to my day. Now, if your hosta is big enough, that massive hosta we cut up, I honestly can't remember, but we got like 24, 32 plants because we do try and cut into sections. So cut it in half, then cut those halves in half, then cut, well, there is math. I'm going to move on. Plant at the correct depth. Doesn't matter that it's a divider. You don't want to plant it deeper. It does not need any extra support. It just needs to go back at the correct depth. Backfill with a real healthy soil, water, fertilize. That's it. And I'm going to tell you this, okay? The first time you go to do it, unless So my first time doing it, I did it with my dad. I was a young guy. I didn't really care. They were my dad's plants. He showed me. I didn't really care, so I just did it. I did what I was shown. I didn't care if I hurt the plant or not. I didn't know enough. First time I did it professionally, where it did matter if I hurt the plant, I was a little bit nervous. Not that nervous. I'd worked with plants enough. My dad had taught me some stuff, but I was still like, ooh, really got to focus now. Some people, if they've never done it and they go to do it, and you can see how hesitant they are, they're like, and they're backing up, and they can't. Just do it. Just do it. Put it in where you want it. Clean chop cut. If you lift it out and you mess up and you just cut off a quarter of the roots, it's not the end of the world. You probably haven't killed your plant. Okay, just get it back in the ground, fertilize, water. But and if you are ever unsure, if you do want to divide something and you're scared, get a hold of us. Okay, we're not hard to get a hold of. We'll be there. Let's myth bust. Okay, number one, I hear this way too many times. I have to put an end to it. Peonies require ants in order to bloom. Absolutely do not. The ants are attracted to the high sugars in the peony. The way I prove this one every time is I know a lot of people, my wife included, she loves peonies in the house. So we cut peonies, we bring them inside. I don't bring any ants in. Okay, I'm not like, oh, each peony needs 5 ants. They wouldn't stick around anyway. The ants would be like, oh my God, I bet you this house has sugar. And they'd go look for my sugar. I don't blame them. You do not need ants for your peonies to bloom. That being said, you don't have to freak out and kill the ants either. Okay, ants are A-okay in my book. Perennials need to be divided every 3 years. I don't know where this arbitrary number came from. I have perennials that have never been divided. I have perennials that I've divided after 2 years. Okay, you don't ever have to divide it. You certainly don't have to divide it on 3 years. I mean, if that was the case, within 12 years, you would have an exponential number of perennials. So that isn't true. You can just leave your perennials on. I know some people that have never divided perennials at all, and they have stunning perennial gardens. Perennial beds require no maintenance. There is no such thing in the gardening world being done. If you are done in the gardening world, it means you are done for that day and that project. Okay? I have never, I am done planting. That part of my gardening is over. Now I am fertilizing, I am deadheading, I am weeding, I'm done amending the soil, but I still have to cultivate it. So you're never done. And the same with perennial beds. You might have to run a soaker hose, you might have to water them, fertilize them, divide them, transplant them. They require maintenance. Granted, maybe not as much as a bed full of annuals, but they do require cutting them back in the fall. Okay, they require some stuff. Perennials live forever, I wish. Very long lived. Some will live a very long time. After a while, a lot of perennials start to get tired. And what I mean by that is they're just not as showy anymore. 10 years ago, they used to put up like 100 flowers. Now they're putting out 10, 20. It's getting old. It's getting tired. And eventually, it's just not going to have the strength. And one winter, it's not going to come back. And that's it. They do not live forever. I wish they did. They don't, but they are very long-lived. For the most part, you put in a fresh hosta like this, you're going to get 20 to 40 years out of it, depending on how well you keep it. You make sure it's got everything. It's got a healthy life. It's in the right conditions, water, fertilizer, etc., etc. You'll get that. And then we go the other way. And I found a lot of these myths online. Some of them I've heard, the ants on the peonies and the dividing every 3 years. And the other ones, I was like looking online. I was on some gardening threads. So perennials require no maintenance. And then the other one, shrubs are low maintenance, perennials are high maintenance. Make your mind up. Okay, if I'm going to bust a myth, do I have to bust it both sides? I guess so. Sure, shrubs can be low maintenance until they're not. As in, we get a massive snowstorm in September and it breaks all the branches off them, or they get infested with disease, or bugs, or something else happens, and then you're out there tending your shrubs, your roses. They got black spot. They need to be deadheaded. They need to be treated properly. And roses aren't that high maintenance either. I'm not picking them out. I'm picking them as a shrub because most people can identify a rose. So Shrubs and perennials, they're about the same maintenance. Keep an eye on them, check them every time you go out, weed once a week, fertilize and water as needed, and that's it. They're neither high maintenance nor low maintenance. I mean, so when we did landscaping, I'll tell you this, it might be able to help some people. We would maintain, and I stay with it, can't always get to it because I'm so busy now in spring and whatnot. Once a week maintenance, and most houses I can maintain your entire property, not cutting grass or anything, just your beds, about an hour, 2 hours. That hour or 2 hour investment gets easier and easier because every time I knock back the weeds, there's going to be fewer the next week. Every time I stay on top of it, there's fewer the next season. So a standard set of maintenance stops it from ever becoming too high maintenance. Every time you're out there, you're keeping an eye on it. You go, oh, what's this spot on the leaf? Or, oh my God, I have lily beetle. Whatever it might be, you're more likely to recognize it if you're out there once a week. Perennials require full sun and lots of water. Already busted that one. They don't require lots of water. To establish, they do, and I think that's where that comes from. I take this hosta home and I plant it. Not now, too early to plant. Let's wait till the weather gets better. But I plant it next week, 10 days time. I'm going to water it probably every day for the first 2 weeks. Taper off to every 3 days, every other day, depending on temperature for the next couple of weeks. So that's a month. Then after that, I'm going to look on it. I'm not going to let it so much as wilt. It starts sagging a bit. It's getting a drink. The next year, probably just going to keep an eye on it, see what Mother Nature gives it. It may need a drink. By the time it's 4 or 5 years old, it'll tell me when it's thirsty and I'll take care of it then. So they don't require a lot of water. They do to establish, then they go very much the other way. And I believe that's where it came from. And the full sun, I think that comes from that standard picture that everybody likes to use because it's so pretty, where you picture the English perennial garden in front of the cottage, and it's full sun and everything's in bloom and there's bees flying around and whatnot. And you go, well, they obviously need a lot of sun. Hostas don't. Lily of the Valley doesn't. Woodruff doesn't. Ferns don't. Bleeding Heart doesn't. There's a number of them that do. We have an entire shade section in our perennial department covered in shade cloth. They do not. Think about forests. Walk through the forest. You see perennials. They want the shade. They don't. If they wanted the sun, they wouldn't be in the forest. So that absolutely isn't true. You have a shady area, there are shrubs and perennials for you. You have full sun, blazing hot area, there are shrubs and perennials for you. So that wraps us up. As always, there is time for question and answer.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so if you have a question for Colin about perennials, feel free to pop them into the chat, and then we will get them answered for you.
Maybe it's because I answer it too much myself, but whenever I do this, I'm always hoping where you're like, hey, does anybody have any questions for Colin? And somebody's like, what's Colin's favorite dinosaur? What's Colin's favorite color? Those are questions that I think are pertinent.
You know what just came into the greenhouse was perennial cacti.
Oh, I love that.
Aren't they so cool?
They're a little bit early this year. We normally don't see them until they are so cool.
So how would you transplant one of those?
Very carefully.
Okay. Okay.
Wear gloves.
Yeah.
Transplant it like you would anything else. They're not going to want to. They're probably going to be want to be moved less than any of the others.
Yeah.
But lift it out. It's going to want a very well drained soil, so make sure your soil mix is good. And I'm not kidding. Gloves. Put on 2 layers of gloves if you have to. Dig around it. So if that's your cactus, dig around it. And then what I would do is I'd put my shovel in, I tilt, so it lifted like that. And then I would try and lift it out by the root ball. Because what'll happen, I don't really care about stabbing myself. I've been stabbed by damn near every plant there is. But what can happen is you're moving it and you're being careful with it and it stabs you and you react as we do and you drop it and you damage it. Okay, and it breaks or something bad happens to it. So just be careful, mitigate that. But they're low growing, they're slow growing, they're damned hardy. Just find the right area and let them live there.
Yeah, okay.
Sounds good. Let them dig it.
I also have one more question. So say you're taking a plant from a property and you are moving it to another property. How do you protect the root ball so it doesn't dry out?
Guerrilla gardening.
Guerrilla
Love
gardening.
it. Number of options. So a few years ago, I had a ton of foxglove, and Peter and Bree wanted some. So I dug it out. Now, you know, I upcycle all my pots.
Yeah.
So I had a ton of pots. So I just transplanted them into pots.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. And then I just left them outside. I saturated them every time I went out. I just drowned them because the black pots and the roots had been disturbed, and they took some home.
Okay.
You can do that. If it's a short distance and you're putting it in a car, put it in the trunk. There's no sun on it. It should stay relatively cool. Put it in a pot. I've seen people wrap them in garbage bags, anything like that. If you're getting it in the ground relatively quick and it's not going to be like if you're walking it down the street in full sun, you might want to put it in a pot. But I've done enough guerrilla gardening where I've just put them in the trunk of a car and we're good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's nice. Okay, I think that's it for today.
Alrighty. Love it. Thank you everybody for being here. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Wherever you are, I hope you're having the weather we're having. It is gorgeous. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to put all the perennials back into their little perennial homes. And then I'm going to go home, and I haven't decided if I'm going to garden or sleep on the couch. That's where my day is going.
That's the best problem to have.
I am not worried about that problem. Whichever one I do is the right one. Yeah. All right, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Remember, stay tuned for our podcast. Not right away. But easy to find, tons of fun information. You can relook at past webinars, and we'll see you all next week. Bye, everyone.